You got your mama's sunshine, you got your daddy's rain. You're like a piece of heaven in a hurricane. And it's bubbling.
Hey there, welcome to this week's podcast. Happy Easter week.
Yeah.
And spring break. And, you know, it's funny because if you have kids, your kids are home, but if you have to work, then it's kind of a hard week. And so hopefully you're able to spend some time with your kids this week if you have children at home. Tom, your kids are even coming home, right?
Yeah, they are. So excited about that. My wife has got the week off. And
they're adults,
they're
right?
adults.
Well,
Excited
cool.
about that.
So I'm here with Pastor Tom Touchstone, my dad, Pastor Ron Vietti, Vince Sierra.
Yep.
And today we're talking about attitude, which is probably something we need to talk about this week because it's busy and taxes are almost due, right?
Oh, man.
So just to remind everyone
Yeah,
of
thanks for that.
fun thing.
I can't forget my birthday is April 15th, and that's tax
Oh,
day.
perfect.
Yep.
That's terrible.
Yep, no birthday present for me.
Right. You end up owing on your birthday.
Oh, there's a negative there
Yeah.
someplace.
At least it's not April Fool's. You know,
That's
'cause
true.
That would have been
And
worse.
Easter looks like we're going to have good weather on Easter Sunday.
Yeah. Yeah, it's
And,
looking like that so far.
So far,
yeah,
right.
you
It's
never
been so
know
crazy this year.
We went out and bought Easter baskets yesterday. We have the privilege of having 2 little grandkids and then 3 grown ones.
Yep.
But it's kind of fun to be able to buy Easter baskets again.
The youngest
do the whole thing.
cousin is 3, and the oldest is, I don't even know. How old's Kylie? I'm not sure. but,
27, 28,
yeah,
somewhere in
so
there.
that's pretty wild. It's kind of funny to see them.
And
be-
married and probably going to have our own kid coming up here pretty soon. So
But anyway, I would love to sit here and tell you guys how I've had such a great attitude my whole life, but that would not be.
I think we
completely
need to
true.
say right at the outset, we haven't mastered these.
Right.
We're still on the journey.
Yeah.
And we're giving you the right things that we should do and the things that we are actually, trying to do. And it's our goal to do them.
Well, I think what's interesting is when you work at a church and you are in a pastoral role, people will come to us with a myriad, so many different things, so many different issues they're dealing with, or so many different, life problems. And some, are common and some aren't. And so we've probably dealt with or talked to people that have dealt with, anything from finances to relationships to their past and, obviously sins and things that they're going through because of those sins. And, it's like people, when I was younger, I used to think that people thought, and I think some people did think that I was in a bit of a bubble because I grew up in church. But really, you see the worst and you see the best in people when you grow up in church, and you see everything in between. And so today, talking about attitude, I would assume that you guys have really experienced the difference that attitude can make when people are going through trials or just through life, right?
Attitude's everything. You've heard him say that.
yeah.
And attitude's yours. Don't let anybody change it. That's what I tell people most all the time. Don't change you, because somebody else has got a bad attitude.
Right.
I think that when you get the Bible says bad company corrupts good morals.
We call them joy
attitudes.
robbers.
It can be infectious,
it can.
and that's the problem,
Well, Winston Churchill said that attitude is a small thing that makes a big difference. I think we need to start out, this is going to be a great subject on the heels of last week values. But I think we need to start with a basic definition. Attitude is the way we think and feel about someone or something. It's a set of emotions and beliefs and behaviors toward a particular object, person, thing, or event. And often it's a result of experience or upbringing, a lens through which we see the world. And I want to start today just breaking down the 3 types of attitudes and then talk about each. The first one is a positive attitude. And I want to say before we talk about that a positive attitude goes beyond a flippant, fake happiness. I think it's just a determination to frame stuff in the best positive way you can. But I think if we think today, starting out, that we're going to be talking about some flippant, fake happiness, like you're giddy all the time, that's a great attitude. No, it's real life. We don't live in la-la land.
Right.
For example, when people come to me for counseling very often, and let's use, for example, they come to me and go, I have cancer. And what I'll normally do with that, I'll say, okay, you have cancer. Let's see how bad it is. Let's talk about it. And I'll say, you know what? Let's go to the worst case scenario. And if we can handle that, then we'll work backwards. The worst case scenario in this cancer is that you can die. And for Christian, death is outrageously a fantastic thing. For us, it's not for our loved ones. But if you can deal with that, then you can work backwards. So when we're talking about attitude, I think it's a decision to say not all life's going to be hunky-dory and great, but we're going to try to have the attitude where we take everything and frame it in the best possible scenario we can. And I think that has a lot to do with our definition. But starting out with positive attitude, that's what we want to talk about first. What is positive attitude and how does it work?
Well, it's looking at, I think it's looking at each situation with a realistic viewpoint and realizing that there's a way through this or around this or over this. Tom, you've talked a lot you've talked to me a lot about James chapter 1. And James talks about, how we should consider it joy when we go through various trials because it produces endurance. And so it's like when you see something, some sort of trial, some sort of issue, some sort of frustration that you know is coming, right? It's right around the corner. You can either sit there and say, oh, here it is again. Here it is again. You can give up right away. Or you can say, okay, why is this here? What is this going to teach me, right? I love the fact that you said life isn't always about just being happy and putting a smile on your face. It's about having the right and proper attitude.
Yes.
Right? One of the scriptures that I always jump to, and one of my favorite books is Ecclesiastes. And if you read it, you'll think I'm a dark person, which is kind of true, but I also love the end of it. And the writer really brings it together. But in chapter 3, it says, for everything there's a season and a time for every matter under heaven, a time to be born, a time to die, a time to plant, a time to pluck up what is planted, a time to kill, a time to heal. All those things are complete opposites, right? And so the proper attitude to have, I mean, if I went to the hospital where a baby is born and the baby's healthy and the parents are healthy, it's a really happy time. It would be inappropriate for me to be really sad about that baby being born, right? But if I'm at a funeral, it would be inappropriate for me to be joyful and laughing and making jokes, right? And so it's really important that we have the right attitude and we see things realistically.
You have to. It depicts a person who always thinks about the greater good, no matter what the circumstances are. It's focusing in on the big picture. For example, let's say you go through an inevitable divorce. We handle these cases all the time. Don't whine. Don't whine. Don't beg. Don't go around with your head down going, if she leaves me or he leaves me, I'm going to kill myself. That's not a good attitude. A good attitude would be to make a choice and say, I'm going to choose to see my new life down the road somewhere. I will have new people in my life, and choose to see that what could be the potential in the big picture. Because we do believe in the Word of God, that God causes all things to work together for good, that I can do all things, I can get through all things. But there's always a fine line. We choose to see beyond the pain. We don't choose to not see the pain. And we refocus on the future and we go, I'm going to choose to see the big picture and I'm going to choose to believe in the Word of God and I'm going to choose to believe that somewhere down the road, this is going to turn out to be something pretty good. That's a good attitude.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, choosing to see the reason behind the thing, instead of the thing itself and to have an attitude of doom and gloom. I mean, so many people have that attitude and it affects them. I would say even physically. Right? I mean, have you ever seen people that they get older and they get sicker and sicker and sicker because of their attitude?
What did we just cover? The Biology of Belief, that book that Bruce Lipton came out with, that the way you see life, the way you think, your negative thoughts all destroys your DNA and your cells in your body.
Right.
We just think that the DNA and cells destroy us, but we destroy it a lot by the way we think and our attitude.
And not to beat a dead horse, but you want to think in terms of what is appropriate. You really do. If you're somebody who sometimes we run into these people that they're always happy, no matter what. They're always like, hey, man, how's it going? And you get this sense eventually that they're being fake. that they're not even being real, you
do.
know?
Right.
But then there's on the opposite end of the spectrum, you meet somebody and how's it going? Well, let me tell you, you know, and they
Right.
have this kind of downer effect. It's just good to be appropriate.
Look, Josh, there's a thing about living by the joy of the Lord instead of happiness. Happiness is according to the haps in life.
Right.
And you'll go up and down with happiness. When things are good, you'll be happy. When they're
Right.
not good, you'll be down. The joy of the Lord is constant and consistent.
You know what I've been thinking about a lot lately is having an attitude of satisfaction. And I know that that's probably unattainable every day, but if you can go through each day and your goal be, I did the best I could today, or I tried hard today, or
Right.
even when I made a mistake, I turned around and fixed it. My wife and I, we got in an argument a while back, and it turned into a 3-day thing, right? And so we talked to some mentors and we kind of worked it out and we talked to each other. Now we have a new plan. So if we cross each other, we make each other mad during the day, which is going to happen, right? Especially with my personality, I'm kind of you get what you kind of, you know, you get what you get with me sometimes. And so I told her, I'm like, I'm going to make mistakes, but let's do this. When I make a mistake, okay, let's stop right there and you tell me about it. Let's handle it right then and there. I will acknowledge it if it's true, and I will say I'm sorry, and we will leave it. And there will be no stewing.
Right.
There will be no, you know, running it through your
Right.
mind, ruminating all
Yep.
day long. There will be none of that. Let's just stop and do it. And you know what? It works.
Isn't it biblical?
It works.
Don't let the sun go down in your wrath. It's biblical.
It's crazy. Yeah.
And we're to deal with them right away.
You know, and it's common sense too.
You know, I like to get a little practical because I think as people say, you got to have a good attitude. Sometimes it's easy to have a good attitude until you have a chance to get a bad attitude.
Oh yeah.
Right.
Like when you first wake up in the morning. I mean, a lot of people will have a bad attitude in the morning because maybe the night didn't end well. So with Josh's thing, you take a grip on it and you kind of work it out before you go to bed. But sometimes you can wake up with a great attitude and that first phone call
Right.
gives you a chance or opportunity
Yeah.
to not. And I think if you're not ready for that, that's when because everybody says attitude's everything. You know, and as you're there, you know, if you put a couple of things in your place, is like, I'm going to filter this through myself
Yeah.
before I answer back. Because how many times it's like you pop off, now the attitude is like terrible.
Well, that same thing that everybody has a plan until they get punched in the nose.
Yeah.
That's Mike Tyson.
So
So everybody has a plan to fight me until I punch him in the face. But if you have a couple of things, like, you know, the other day I was over at Memorial Hospital filming, and my wife. And it's funny because when I drove over there, I thought, it's late in the day. My wife, if she followed me and tracked me, she'd probably go, what in the heck is she doing at Memorial Hospital? No, I don't. So my wife goes like, I haven't heard from Tom all day. She goes, I called you and your phone was on silent. I looked where you were and you're in Memorial Hospital. She goes, I immediately freaked out. And so when she was talking to me, I go, well, you sound like you're angry. She goes, I am angry. I'm angry. And,
Yeah.
I thought for a moment, I said, okay, honey, I go, I should have let you know because this could have happened. And I took a moment. I said, I know you got a bad attitude, and that was. And I'm going to own
a
that.
great way to start a conversation.
Yeah, with your wife. I know you have a
this
bad
is it.
attitude.
But I said, but I had a part in giving you that attitude.
Yeah.
So now I want to just say, hey, I'm
That's good.
going to learn from this. And I go, it was a
I'm
true
glad
story.
you wasn't visiting somebody at the morgue.
No, it was honestly.
That would really been bad.
But I thought about. I go, honey, I did think about this, but I go, what are the chances that you're going to track me today?
You know, I think the reason, and I've been guilty of getting caught in the news cycle. And, you know, you get on your phone, you start scrolling through, and I start telling my wife all these horrible stories that have happened. And she's like, why are you doing this? Why are you in the
Right.
And honestly,
all the stuff that's going
I
back,
thought
yeah.
about it. I thought
Debbie
through
Downer.
it the other day, and I thought, I think the reason that we like these news stories is because we compare our lives to those lives.
Sure.
And we're like, oh, my life's not that bad.
Yeah.
But does it actually help when you are reading these terrible
Right.
stories?
It depends. If there's a lesson to be learned out of them,
Right.
then you need to read them.
That's true.
But I'm going to give you one that'll probably convict you here. I wrote it down. Someone said it, and I thought it was pretty cool. A person with a good attitude, with a healthy attitude, with a positive attitude, they have a mindset that will look for the good in other people, no matter how bad they behave. That convicts me. No matter how bad they behave, you're looking for the good in them.
Yeah.
How many times have we been guilty in the past years or maybe months or weeks to go home and look at the bad in someone
you're right, yeah.
and badmouth them. Where a good attitude, our goal should be to look at the good in them and choose not to see the
Vince
bad.
and I,
but that's a hard one.
Vince and I have had talks about this, about leading in the culture we're in, and we are trying to be intentional about looking at people based on who they can be, who they should be, who they are called to be, rather than who they are being.
Isn't that the way God
moment.
sees us?
Yeah, 100%.
I think God sees that we have a human condition because that's the way He made us.
Yeah.
And I think people are emotional.
There's
so if you see people that that are prone to that, I mean, I always try to give people the benefit of the doubt for being human. What happened to them an hour before?
Right, yeah.
Things like that. I think that pastors preached on that before, and those are little tools that if you put them into play in your life, but you got to be prepared before you do that. Because if you just pop into a bad attitude person, how many times they give you a bad attitude and go, oh, really?
Right,
well, you know what I think?
Yeah.
It's a positive mindset.
Right.
You got to decide in this situation with this person, can I choose to find something positive in this?
Well,
and if you can, do it.
Let me ask you this, and I think I know the answer, but I'm going to ask you anyway. What can you do daily to make sure that your attitude remains good?
I got a whole list of them at the end.
Well, so
things that we can do to change our attitude to being more positive.
Yeah, one of the words you keep using was mindset, and I was thinking our attitude is a reflection of our mindset, and I think that's huge because that's an overarching thing that's constantly happening. Because if your mindset is, you have, whether it be faith or if your mindset is, you have this goal in mind, the little stuff underneath can't really take away from your mindset and that good attitude that you always have. If you always have a bigger goal or you always have a thing,
well, I think of
that is bigger than.
Dad, you're older in age, and I'm not insulting you by saying that. It's just
it is what it is.
But you see some guys that are your age and older, and they retire and they go fishing or they do whatever, but then they get bored, and then they find their buddies, and then they start complaining about things together. Like they're just reading the news all day long, and they complain together. How do you keep from becoming that person?
These guys, a lot of them have too much idle time on their hands. And what has happened with a lot of our older people is life hasn't worked out the way they thought it should work out, and they're bitter, and they're against anyone whose life is working out different than theirs. They're not staying busy. And because they're not staying busy, they're not staying close to the Lord. For example, in the Bible, we get this old guy that asks when they're handing the lands out, he says, man, I want the land where the giants dwell. And he said, and he didn't say this, but we imply, one of the reasons this guy was old, and he wanted the land where the giants dwelt at is because I believe he knew that would keep him at the altar. And if you stay close to God, then the joy of the Lord becomes your strength. It has nothing to do with happiness.
So the reason I ask is because, I'm 42, middle age, and I just read...
That's hard to think when he says that.
Though, that I'm 42 right now.
No, you're middle-aged.
Oh, middle-aged? Oh, right. I know. But I read this article where they talked about the happiness curve. And they said that you start off happy, right? Just that's default. You're happy. And then you get less happy until about your 40s. And then you start to get, you're supposed to start to get happy again near the end. And it creates a smile. Yeah. But then I see some people, do this and then they go down. It's like
there's a lot of gripey, grouchy old people out there. The old people syndrome.
It's like you either grow bitter or better, right?
But let's take this even, to a deeper level here. Okay, I'm older, and I'm sure a lot of older people can equate to me. Equate to me, that's not a word.
That's fine.
They can relate to me. Sometimes I get to talking faster than I'm thinking. But for example, as I sit here today, and I know this is redundant, I know it's old news, but I have a second cancer in me that wasn't life-threatening last time I had it checked. That's been some time ago. Now, I don't know where I'm at today. And I think a lot of older people are like me. They have things wrong with them. They could die tomorrow. They could die next year, whatever. They know that, time is marching on. They don't have a lot of it left. But with me, the joy of the Lord is my strength. As I sit here today, I have no idea what that cancer is doing in my body because I haven't had a checkup for a long time. I'm going to have one soon. But you know what? Can I say this? And boy, I hope I'm right. I'm really not worried or concerned about it at all. Because number one, I have the Word of God, which most older people don't have. And if they do have it, they don't believe in it. Number two is, I know God's given me promises. And I know number three, that no matter what I go through, He'll be there with me. So I'm spending so much time with the Lord that the joy of the Lord is helping me have a better attitude. And we're going to see that in the end today, that we have to actually pray for a good attitude. We've got to want it. But let me kind of change it for a second here, because I have something I want to say. And that is, I always tell people, very often on the internet or whatever, I might end a post and go, don't let the joy robbers get you today. As Tom said, you get up and you're in a good mood when you get up maybe, but something hits you. One of the things I want to say to our listeners is, if you want to have a good attitude, one thing you cannot do is let your past mistakes beat you down. You have to deal with those. I look back in my life, I made some of the most big mistakes. If I had not made those, I'd be a pastor of a lot bigger church than I am today. But I'm going to share something with you that was on my mind today. Some of us are still beating ourselves up. We're our own worst enemy. We don't need somebody to give us a bad attitude. We develop it ourselves.
The critic lives between your ears.
Yeah. And so Selma Hayek said something one day. It's on a video, and I love it. And she says, if you did something wrong, don't let anyone take your mistake and use it against you. Even if it is a mistake, it belongs to you. It is yours. Own it. Yes, I did it. Throw it back in their face. Your mistake is a valuable tool to help you grow.
Yep.
She goes on. If you can say, so what, to their face, so what? I messed up. Tomorrow will be another day. Next year will be another year. It's my mistake. It's not your mistake. I own it. You don't own it. So, and it's really cool what she said. Had me jazzed.
Yeah.
Well,
if we've
praise
learned,
the Lord. Yes.
Yeah.
if we've learned anything in the past few years, when you own something, there's nothing else people can say. They're like, okay, all right, they move on.
What's the magic word? I'm sorry.
Right.
I did it. What can I do now?
Yeah. Or
I'm going to move on.
Or you can take the Trump route and just say, nope.
I didn't do it.
But truthfully, if you can get to people, then if they smell blood in the water, certain people, then they'll keep attacking you.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you
can't have a good attitude if you're beating yourself up every day.
So I'm reading the story of Paul, or Saul, how Saul became Paul, and how he became a follower of Jesus. And he had all these filters in his life, right? He was raised a certain way, to believe a certain way, and he was raised to believe, to hate this certain group of people, anybody really that wasn't following the way that he thought they should follow, the Jewish way. And I was just thinking about how many people out there that listen to this, and if you're one of those people, consider this. What are the filters that you have now based on, how you grew up and how you were raised and what you were exposed to?
Yeah.
Because those filters could actually cause an underlying bad attitude that could really affect you to even see the truth. And that could be a huge problem.
Well, Josh, can't we just say that's wrong with certain people that don't like other people's group today?
Yeah.
I don't like that people's group. Why? I'm not sure. I've just been told or been taught
not us.
to like, yeah. And so I think that's a real dangerous place to get in. And that's why, as you're out there in your parenting, I think parenting, we have more responsibility than we ever think. We got a clean slate that we're working with, and we can put some bad ideas into their head, or you could put good ideas in. That's why these kids, I'll go back to it and just say that, your voice, while it's loud in your children's lives, you got to put the right things into them. You got to encourage them. Pastor Ron said that one time about the milkman that would tell the little girl how little Miss America doing today, and she became Miss America. So I'm just saying, we have that power, right? The Bible says life and death is in the power of the tongue. And so if you're there and you're training those kids up, I think you've got a better chance at that. And then, what is it? How many times, Pastor, do you said from the pulpit that I had the wrong way of thinking for so many years, and so now I don't say those words to myself.
Yeah,
critical words to themselves.
I can still hear my dad. I can still hear him saying, when I was going to help someone that wasn't in our family, he'd go, "Why would you do that? They're not in our family. Don't help them." And that stuck in my mind.
Yeah.
And so I had to turn that curse around. I was not raised in a healthy family. Some probably more unhealthy than mine. People are listening could probably say mine was more unhealthy. Many of you had a lot healthier upbringings than I did. But those things stayed in my mind. I could probably think of 5 things similar to that now that my dad taught me. And he goes, those aren't the kind of people you want to help. And I remember those things well. I wished I had more positive things, but we can turn that curse around.
Yes, we can.
We can turn it around. I think I did better than my dad, and hopefully you, Josh, and Tara will do better than I do.
Well, that's just it. You can complain about your upbringing or your background, or you can say, I'm going to do better.
I'm going to break
and
it.
I love that attitude because that's how it's supposed to be. Progress is supposed to happen.
Well,
I'm supposed to raise my kids better than you raised me, Dad. I mean, that's
It's true.
how it should
You should be
go,
better.
I think a
right?
lot of people feel vulnerable though, because they get into a situation where things haven't gone their way.
Yeah.
Life hasn't been all peachy. They didn't have a good upbringing. So keeping that negative attitude or bad attitude is easier for them because they don't have to expect for anything good to happen. So it's easier to have the bad attitude, or easier to just say like it ain't gonna work out, or
Right.
inflict it on other people, because then you're not set up for disappointment
I think
later
that the
on.
church as a whole fails in communicating the fact that the point of life is not that it'll
Perfection.
go our way.
Right.
The point of life is that it'll go God's way. That it'll go to the church's way.
Make
that'll go
adjustments.
yeah, exactly.
adjustments.
And when you put your joy in that basket of eternal life, of God's thing, right? Then little things they'll remain little things. In fact, they'll even become smaller than little things, right? And the big things will become opportunities instead of challenges. I mean, there's a huge
Why
difference.
can't I have a good attitude? This is Easter week, and every year around Easter, I read like 10 books on near-death experiences, all this stuff.
Yeah.
And I get really jazzed. I mean, I've probably studied everything out there on near-death experiences and life out of the body and on and on and on.
Well, you are a salesman for the best deal on earth.
Oh,
you know?
there you go. I
And
like
that's-
that. Salesman for the best deal on the earth. And Sunday, I get to go sell them. But, I was thinking about that. As Christians, people who really believe in the Bible, we ought to have the best attitude of anybody out there.
Yeah.
I wrote this down. I'm not crazy. My reality is just different than yours. That's all. And
That's
so
good.
we should have excellent. I mean, we got Romans 8:28 that God will cause everything to work together for good. He'll meet all our needs. We can do all things through Him. Psalms 1-3. If you do the proper things, everything you do will prosper. I mean, we should have the best attitude of anybody in the whole world. And that I say that to some of our shame.
Yeah. Well, the right attitude. And I think that if you were to study people that have been successful in life, you see that they have the right attitude at the right time. And that makes all the difference.
We're going to have problems in life, but even then, God has promised to walk with us through those problems.
Right. We'll take a guy like Michael Jordan, right? Who it would be arguable if he was a happy guy. I don't know. I have no idea if he was happy or not. But he accomplished a lot with the attitude he had. And one of the famous things he said is you miss 100% of the shots you don't take, right? I think that was Jordan.
Yes.
If not, it was another famous athlete, but I think it was Jordan. You miss, 100% of the shots you don't take. And that was his attitude. I'm going to keep trying. And every time he went, I don't know if you watched the documentary, very interesting. Every time he would step on that court, he thought, I'm going to win. And that attitude paid off for him in so many ways.
I read something that says you can make, if you have a good attitude, a positive attitude, it can make you look like a runner or a winner at the same time.
Well, how many of us even forget to define our wins, right? Like, what is a win for me? What is for me, a win is my kids are growing up healthy, or they get through certain life, issues, things.
The
that
Bible
are coming
calls
their
it
way.
that those who overcome is still smiling when the dust settles.
Yeah.
And Tom's dying. I don't even have caffeine today, and I'm going 100 miles an hour here.
Well, it's so funny. There's a commercial out right now, and I'll duck the podcast. But the family's getting ready to go someplace, and this girl's dressed up for a dance recital. And she goes, hold on. She runs back in and gets the suitcase and drags it out. And the dad goes, what's that for? She goes, for the overall best trophy.
There you go, man. She's determined to get it.
Well, it was, and the title was Optimist.
Yeah.
There you go.
She's like, I got to be prepared to bring home my trophy.
Yeah.
And I
Well,
thought, what an expectation for something.
Right.
you
The
know?
whole glass half full thing is really a thing. I mean, you can literally look at life as, oh, it's half, like for me, middle age, right? But I mean, I halfway, I'm 42, times that by 2, 84. That's probably the average age. So I'm like, okay, is my life half over, or is it, am I about to start this second half, and
Right.
do better?
Yeah.
And that's what kind of attitude.
Well,
I wanna have,
I think you
know?
you hit something good too. I think a lot of people they're on social media and they compare themselves to a lot of things. So the win for them,
Right.
they might have wins every day. It might be littler things, but because they're looking at social media and people doing this or that, or people excelling and they're not where they want to be,
Right.
they get that attitude where, well, I can't just get there, so they give up or they get that.
Well,
you know,
also going back to
Eeyore
something I
attitude.
just said about following Christ, like if we are Christians, we believe in an eternal life,
Right.
which means we believe in a life beyond us. So like what I do today is going to affect my kids and their kids and all that. And I might not be around to see it, but that's okay because I'm a part of it. And, you know, when I say I'm not going to be around to see it, I will from heaven, right? Like biblically, like it's almost like, I don't know, you always talk about, there is a scripture. It says that there's a crowd of witnesses. And I always
Well,
wonder.
no, there's 2 or 3 scriptures in the Bible that hints to the
know.
fact that we can't say they can't see what's going
Right.
on.
I mean, if anything, I think we're going to be aware, somehow.
Yeah.
And so to be a part of the world's getting crazier and crazier, but to be a part of the future of history is huge.
One of my major concerns in life is that we have every Sunday churches packed out with people who really don't believe the Bible. They say they do, but they really don't believe it.
Yeah.
If we're going to live forever, and that's though death is the worst thing that can happen to us,
Right.
we ought to be pretty joyous people with good attitudes.
Right. No, you're right. And it's that perspective that we get when we get together. We talk about those things that helps and changes.
I read a story today in one of the books, and again, I'm not a proponent. I'm not out here promoting near-death experiences. I think a lot of them are phony, a lot of them are fake, some of them are real, on and on and on. But I read one by a godly person's, near-death experience. Thought it was interesting. So she got to heaven, and a big percentage of near-death experiences say when they get there, they play a life review for them. And this girl's name, I think, was Kinsey McKenzie or something. And she said she got there, and they said, okay. And they said, put these glasses on, and said it really wasn't glasses, said it was something huge. And in heaven, when you think something, it just happens. And 1, 2, 3, the screen came on, and it showed everything in her life, from a child to an adult, till the day she died. It showed every tooth that she lost, every award that she won in sports, everything. And it played it. She thought, man, that was unbelievable. I remember those moments. They were happy moments. Then the angel said, we're going to look at another one. And they played another life review. And now this time it wasn't the same things. It was only the things that mattered to God. It was the times when they loved someone, forgave someone. And she said it was phenomenal.
Yeah.
She got through with that and went, he recorded every single thing I did to help other people.
Well, talking about going back to that filter idea, so many people have filters about God and church and, you know, what we do. And there's that scripture that says God is love. And I think, man, if you can remove those filters, you can start to understand what that means. Anytime you've ever felt love, anytime you've ever felt forgiven, anytime you've ever felt let off the hook, anytime you've ever felt good, happy, the wind is
That's God.
the breeze. That's God.
Okay, Josh, I got
Right?
another
That's
one.
God, man.
Another one I read this week. And again, I'm not pushing near-death experiences. But this guy said I was a hellfire and brimstone preacher. And he died in death beyond experience. And he said, God showed me that was so wrong. He's a God of love. And he said, I came back, went to my congregation. I said, I've been filling you with a bunch of crap.
Wow.
He said, God is love. He forgives. He's full of grace. He had a whole different message.
And his congregation is
He lost his congregation. He lost it. It went on to say,
like
wow, but what an experience though to come back and say, well, like, you know, whatever you can count it or not count it, but to come back and make that change, you know.
and there's got people out there listening going, well, I don't believe that. God is a holy God. And he gets, well, whatever. But his primary characteristic is love. Let me say another thing too. If you're going to have a good attitude, you're going to have to learn to laugh at yourself.
Yeah.
What was that commercial on TV where that dude was out there trying to sell insurance or whatever, and he was yelling at everybody, and he yells at his neighbor 50 feet across the road, yelled at one 100 feet across the road, yelled at one 10 feet away from him, and they said, I'm right here. Why are you yelling at me? And he said, because that's just what I do. and that's just what I do. And we got to laugh at ourselves sometimes and go, you know what? I have found out the hard way. It's hard for me to maintain a bad attitude or a good attitude when I'm wanting such perfection out of myself.
Perfectionism. Yeah.
It's hard to keep a good attitude because I find myself mad at myself all the time. You have to learn to step back and laugh at yourself and not take yourself overly serious.
Well, I think we underestimate the power of some, right? We have this idea of all or nothing. Like I have to have everything or it's nothing. But some is good. I have some. You have some.
Yeah, I have some. We put our
with
sums
some.
together.
Yeah, like it's a good thing to have some.
You know, the other day
know?
I was out and I did something. I felt pretty good about myself till I went in the house and looked in the mirror and my zipper was undone.
Yeah.
Now you're thinking, where did I go today?
I was like-
Who did I see
I
today?
was like, oh, you're
Oh,
kidding.
yeah.
You know, my
But-
shoes look great, and then your zipper's
but then
down.
you have
Yeah.
to laugh at
Oh.
yourself and
Yeah.
go, wow, okay.
I got mad at my wife that day because I had a big piece of toilet paper in my glasses. Went that way half an afternoon. She never said anything.
Oh man.
But then again, another one I want to get in, and I want to switch over to something else that you guys said. But if you're going to have a good attitude, you must see your enemies in a different light because they'll rob your joy from you. Listen to this quote. I read it to your mother and she loves it. If people are trying to bring you down, that only means that you are living above them. And that's probably not the best thing to say, but you've got to redefine your enemies as those people out there that are broken probably, but by being your enemies, all they're going to do is cause you to try to strive to a better level. But you can't let them get to you.
You know, I can honestly say, and I don't know what this says about me, but I don't have any enemies. I really don't. I have people that annoy
That
me.
you know of.
There are people that annoy me, right? But they're not enemies. They're just annoyances. And I couldn't even write a list of those people. But I that's the one thing I don't want to live life with is having to live life without forgiveness, right? Live within unforgiveness in your heart. It's interesting that Jesus teaches us how to pray in Matthew 6, right? And he goes through this list of how kind of like a format of how we should address God. And then at the end, he says, forgive.
Right.
Forgive. Don't hold anything against other people. And there's a power in that. It's like what are you doing to that person if you haven't forgiven them?
It's so crazy.
You know?
My wife has a biological father she just met at about 50. And it's just so interesting because when we get together, he'll always talk to me about, oh my gosh, I just can't believe, Tiffany forgives me. And I always tell him, I go, well, just because she grew up as, a child and, she didn't have you, but at one point Jesus became that for her.
Right.
And I go, she holds no hard feelings. And it's funny because I'm sitting looking at him going, well, she's just 10 foot away in the house once you go talk to her.
Right,
But it's so intimidating. And how many times can you be relieved of something if you just go ask a question that you're vulnerable in? Saying, hey, if I hurt you or did I upset you or I wasn't there for you. And like Pastor Ron said, say, hey, maybe I didn't know what I was doing, but hey, I'm sorry. And then be able to move on.
Well, I think the joy of the Lord is the source of your good attitude. But there's so many of these things like taking yourself too seriously, letting your enemies bring you down that will block that during the day if you're not prepared to deal with them.
Well, if you're always in the mindset that this person has it out for you, then you're never going to be able to get the thing done that you're supposed to get done. Like you said, you're letting the joy robber steal your joy constantly. And that's not the mindset. I love that you said live above them, but also live with them, right? Because you got to live with them. These are people that some of the people that you said you don't know that you have enemies, but you might be having to live with them.
That's why conversations will help.
One of the things that we don't want
to because something you did.
One of the things that we fail to do because because sometimes we can't go in with the right mindset or attitude is we fail to have hard conversations with people, and those hard conversations actually lead to a really, really great place and actually can help you fix.
It's called conflict resolution.
Sure, and all of that, that's true. But all that stuff has to do with where you're at with your attitude and not letting things like you and I. One of the things, Pastor, you've allowed your staff and people around you is us to have good, open conversations with one another, have a hard conversation, and then get done and be like, we still have nothing but love, and we're all good. And I think that's important, especially when you're working with people, that attitude of just saying, like, we're good.
To me, a deep relationship is like those old cowboy movies where the two brothers are outside, and they've got into an argument over something, and, man, they're going to blows. A bloody lip, bloody nose, and they're rolling the dirt, headlocks, and the mom says, time for dinner. Yeah. They brush off, and they go in and eat together.
And they're best friends.
And they're best friends.
They're best friends.
I had a guy the other day look at me, and he goes, oh, you'll forgive me for that, right? Because we're brothers. I go, no, I have a real brother. And we used to punch each other in the head
Yeah.
and forgive each other. I say, you don't know my past, so let's don't
Josh
use that
and I
analogy.
aren't good friends today because we've never punched each other in the head.
But like Ron said, boys can do that. And
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
You know,
They were
I think
fun.
determination. One of you said determination a while ago is part of a good attitude.
Yeah.
I'm a late bloomer. I watched the movie Blind Side, I think it was called, for the first time last night. It was a blockbuster movie, and I think
Sandra Bullock.
Bullock's won an Oscar for it.
Yeah, she's great.
And she takes this orphan, brought him in, and a true story, and just loved on him and gave him everything. The first bed he ever had, everything, and won his love over. And she went to his football practices, everything, and he played in high school. He went to Mississippi State and 8 years in the NFL. And I highly recommend seeing the movie.
his name's Michael Orr, isn't it?
Michael Orr, yes. And you know, and in our life, she was a fixer controller. People would be all over this lady. You're a fixer controller. But you know what? She was determined to do whatever she had to do to get that boy where he was supposed to be. And I think determination, and sometimes I'll see people have a good attitude, and for some people, this might not be a pleasant thing to hear. I kind of liked it, but I heard a guy the other day say, you know, a lot of people just want to fly first class. Heck with them. I want to own the whole plane. And today I kind of like that. A lot of people say that's wrong.
Well, take and I don't know the lady's name in real life, but Sandra Bullock's character, in
Right.
that. And I've met people like that before. If she wasn't pouring into that guy, that young kid, she would have been pouring into
She would
somebody
have been.
else.
It was her nature.
She was gonna do something good, no matter what. And I think that it's so easy for us to throw a shade or whatever you call it,
Right.
to kind of belittle people that are doing good in this world, because I think sometimes we feel guilty that we haven't done enough.
And her friends did belittle her in the movie.
For sure.
They really belittled her for what she's doing. If you haven't seen the movie, I really recommend you see
But
it.
that's so
Blind Side.
common. It's so common for somebody to do something good and then they have haters all of a sudden. And that's just terrible.
Well, you know, and I think this is something that too many people, especially old people, fall into. They don't realize their capabilities.
Yes.
They think, hey, I'm squeezed out, or
Yes.
I'm used up, or something.
Burned out.
And the greatest thing that I love about the Bible is I think it's the most optimistic book you can read in the world, because in the end you have hope.
Right.
I mean, there's always hope. And as we even talked about Samson a few podcasts back, you still see hope in what he was able to be used by God and do.
Yeah, I love the Samson story because he said it's not too late to do something good.
Yeah,
and that's how. So there's so many people. Like, think about age, right? We're talking about age a little bit.
Yeah.
And there's so many people that have grown bitter because they haven't spent their life well, or they feel like they haven't.
Right.
But you're still here.
Yeah.
You're still here, and
Right.
there's still something good you can do.
Yeah.
Right.
Dr. Thoreau, our philosophy teacher at college, he said there's a marked difference between people on their deathbed who have lived their life really well for others and given to charity, and those who did nothing with their life.
Well, you talked a long time ago about the graveyards. That's the
Richest place.
Yeah, it's just of
a
crazy.
lot of hopes and desires that were unfulfilled.
Well,
undone.
we
good,
create
you
these
know?
constructs, right? Like you're saying, like in the sense of like you're too old, you can't do that anymore. You can't go back to school. You know, you can't run a marathon. We think about all these things you can't because of age, because of time,
Right.
because of money, because of all those things. But then you see one of our favorite stories when we watch movies or we pick up a book is when people overcome all those things, when they overcome the construct of time, energy, age, all these things, because you're like,
it's-
wow, they were able to do it
Right.
with so little.
And it's not about doing stuff, it's about having the right attitude. It's about having the right heart,
Being,
the right
being
character.
where you're at every given
a
moment.
desire-
Every given moment.
To develop a desire to change is really limitless, right? If you have a desire to change, it's just, what can't you do?
And are you ever there, wherever there is? Do you ever get
I don't think
there?
you do.
That's a
Right.
goal. It's a goal to be where you're at in any given day. But let's go on and we need to address bad attitudes. There are good attitudes, positive attitudes. There are negative bad attitudes.
Oh, there is. I've had 'em.
Now, these people think about the worst. They're Debbie Downers. They see life through a negative lens. They gripe, they complain, they have a bitter attitude. They're always looking for bad in everything. They're angry most of the time. They don't ever let anything slide. For example, you know these people. I've been there. They go to the gym. What do? They come home and are complaining the first thing. Somebody was on my machine, and you know what? They were on their phone. They wouldn't get off their phone, and somebody was rude to me today. If they go to the grocery store, They were visiting with the cashier, and you know what? They must spend 10 minutes talking, and there was a line 12 people long, and they didn't call for another cashier.
it's
Church worship was out of key. The pastor preached too long.
It's funny because I quit going to the gym because I had a bad attitude when I was going, but it's because I had a preconceived idea that I was going to have a bad attitude when I went. I was like, these people, you know, and I went there and I would just complain about the kid that was on 3 different machines or whatever.
By the way, the life hack, if you're ever at the cash register and they're talking and they're sharing live, is you get in on the conversation with them.
There you go.
You just get it. They're like, hey,
That's good.
and you're like,
That's
hey,
good.
yeah, what are you doing? And then they're like, oh, I gotta go.
Well, I say something really odd and weird and awkward, and it makes people uncomfortable.
Yeah, it's a life hack. Just think you guys are welcome. Get in on
But
it.
have we been there? I have. I battle with my attitude.
Yeah.
As we said at the beginning,
Yeah.
I don't have this mastered. And, you know, a friend of mine owns some gymnasiums in Colorado, and I would love to go to his gym. He said one day he was listening and overheard a guy yelling at a lady. He said, that's my machine. I'm working on 2. That's my machine. So he came out of his office, said, do I see your name in that machine anywhere? I don't think it belongs to you. Just get your butt out of here. You're gone. He kicked him out of the gym.
Yeah.
And
I know who you're talking about. He's hardcore.
he's hardcore. But you know what? I've been here. Somehow I have to daily, and I've been working on it for several years now, try to hear myself talking all the time. I come home, how was the gym today? Is my first response going to be negative? Or is it going to be, man, somebody's in there with the coolest tennis shoes today?
Yeah.
Or somebody's in there and I haven't seen them for a long time and I didn't think they liked me and they were friendly. This is going to take work. And I'll say in a few minutes as we close it up and in the podcast and we talk about 5 ways to change your attitude,
Okay.
you've got to want to change your attitude. You got to see the benefit in it.
So my daughter, she's 6, and we went over to some friend's house last night, and the kids that were going to be at the house were older than her, and so she was nervous. She had a fearful attitude, I would say, and I felt so bad for her. But at the same time, I told her, you know what? It's going to be okay. Just be cool, have fun, enjoy them, ask them questions, listen, you know, and just it's going to be all right. And at the end of the night, she remembered that conversation and she said, Daddy, she said, it was okay. It was fun, you know? And it was all about the attitude of going in, you know, of like what she ended up doing going in.
And expectations. Isn't it great that at that age, she can look at something as being learnable?
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
it's amazing.
You
Yeah,
know, there again,
really is.
I've sat down because the people have had bad attitudes.
What about
before.
the times like, so, you know, one of my kids is a teenager, so he has to do chores now. And one of the chores we have him do is pick up dog poop. Okay.
right.
So on Saturdays, he gets the, hey, Huntington. Yeah, Dad. Yeah. He's all excited. Hey, it's time. You got to go pick up that dog poop.
Right.
There's gonna be times, you know, that we're handed in life. It's like, you got to go pick
Yeah.
up the dog poop, you know?
Absolutely.
And how do you stop yourself from having a bad attitude in those times? You know, because we're literally, because
Right.
how do you, oh yeah,
you're
Dad,
doing-
Dad, I'm so excited about picking up
When you're
that.
doing something you don't want to do,
Yeah.
or asked to do something. Yeah,
Yeah,
I know,
yeah.
it happens all the time.
Or you're handed that
Yeah.
in life, you know, in the situation that, you know, that you're in this thing. So how do you overcome that in some way, you know?
Well, you know, it's perspective. It
Yeah.
really, truly is, and it has to do with: are you going to look at the bad and think about that, or are you going to look at the good and think about that? Is there good in I have to pick up dog poop? Yeah, there is.
Is there?
Because yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
There is.
There is.
I can jump
no,
in
I
on
love
this.
There is.
No, I
because-
love it.
because
Yeah.
afterwards you have the satisfaction of, oh, my yard is clean, you know, and I
Yes.
can, you know, the younger assemblies can go out there and play. I don't
Yeah.
have to worry about stepping in it. It's not a bad
Yeah, yeah.
thing.
I think you just picture people that you don't like, faces on the dog manure.
see, I
and
like
you
that
go,
one better.
Out with you, out with you. I'm throwing you out.
So there's a life hack, Huntington. You just got your life
throw it
hack,
over the
buddy.
fence.
No, that's
So-
good.
to the
It's,
neighbor you don't like.
and that's good. It's about serving another person. With
Yeah.
Huntington, he's serving another. He's not really serving himself,
I don't,
right?
So I don't know why that story made me think of this. I don't even know what it has to do with. But my daughters had balloons yesterday.
Okay.
And so my daughter was trying to play a game called Keepy Uppy, and she hits it, and it goes high, and then it comes back down. It's from the show Bluey. And so I said, "Hey, honey, watch this." And I had the blower in my hand, the leaf blower. I said, "Watch this, honey." And I throw it up, and I go, woo, and I
Blew it over the
shot it up.
fence?
It hit a jet stream, and it just took off. And she looked at me, and she started bawling.
Yeah,
She was
yeah.
like, "Dad!" What's wrong? And so I thought quick, right? And I went inside the house and found another pink balloon and blew it up and brought it out. I'm like, I found it. Now I lied. Okay, I lied. I lied to
We're
my
on a
little
new
child.
podcast now.
But you know what? It cleared her
She
up.
just saw you through the window blowing
It
the balloon
cleared her
up.
up. She's all, thank you, Daddy. And you know, it's just those little things of
Yeah.
and I know that's a silly example, but it's like the little things in life that make a big difference.
Yeah.
It's important to understand that, you know, in work, in life, in everything.
Good attitudes, bad attitudes, and neutral attitudes.
Yeah, and it's okay to lie. If it's,
Is there
if it's
such thing as a
small one.
neutral attitude?
Yeah,
Neutral attitude.
there is. It's called depression, and it's not fun. When you stop, because the opposite of love is apathy. It's not hate. So people like, you know,
Right.
I think now that's kind of a common thing to say, but back in the day, like I used to think the opposite of love was hate, but love and hate are both strong feelings. They're both you're connected to it, right? It's much easier to turn somebody who hates into somebody who loves than it is to turn somebody who doesn't care into somebody who loves.
But could a neutral attitude, you have good attitudes, bad attitudes, and neutral attitudes. Could a neutral attitude represent someone who, if you gripe, I'll gripe with you. If you complain, I'll complain with you. If you celebrate, I'll celebrate with you. They can just go either way. They
Well,
just
that-
really don't give a hoot.
That's like the old Jewish way of like if if somebody dies, they would just spend time
Mourn.
with them and they
Yeah.
would mourn with them, you know.
Interesting.
And
But that's healthy there.
It's totally,
But
yeah.
somebody wanting to gripe, you go, I'll gripe with you, man.
Well,
if you want to get angry, I'll get angry with you. I'll jump
that's
on your
somebody
bandwagon.
Who doesn't have a strong constitution
Yeah.
and just kind of follows. And I think
But then if you want to be happy, I'll be happy with you.
ultimately, I think that probably makes people sad. You know.
Yeah. Well, let's. I know I kind of keep butting in. I'm the one watching the clock
No,
over
you're
here.
good.
I'm watching the clock. I'm
I like
watching the
this.
clock. I'm looking
You're
back.
keeping us on task.
How
today.
do we change our attitudes? Let's talk about 5 or 6 ways that we can change our attitudes, and what should we expect when we try to change them.
You
First of all, okay, we need to see a need. You've got to see a need
That's good.
to have a good attitude.
Yeah.
So don't settle for average. I believe 2 or 3 things. Number one, a good attitude is going to make me more successful in life. A good attitude is going to make more people want to be around me. A good attitude, now I really believe this, is going to give me maybe 5 or 10 more years longer on this earth. Because like the book, Biology of Belief, it's actually going to affect my DNA and cells by having a good attitude. Like, I don't know how you guys do with your wives as far as making them laugh, but I had my wife laughing so hard yesterday. I do this very often. We're driving through East Bakersfield, and I'm doing a tour as we go. And I'll grab the microphone. Now, here on the left, here's what we see.
That's
And
funny.
she is just in stitches. And so, you know, I think this will make me live longer.
Well, to go along with that, I'm studying this story between of Saul's conversion, right? Who became Paul, who became the most prolific apostle ever. And the one of the parts that popped out to me was Jesus when he meets him on the road to Damascus. There's this bright light. He becomes blind, and Jesus says, "Saul, why are you persecuting me?" That question of why was the question that really changed his heart and changed his mind. And I think that when we find ourselves in a really negative place or a really sad place or upset place or frustrated, whatever it is, ask yourself why. And I think when we confront ourselves with that, we start to understand that our reasoning is a lot of times selfish, or
Yeah.
it's just not the right
Yeah.
reason.
What motivates you to have a good attitude?
Well, I would say obviously my family, you know, there's reasons, and I have to ask myself that question, that why question, probably every day. I am somebody who is, my default is probably sadder than the normal person, darker than the normal person.
Yeah.
I've had to deal with that, and I've had to make a lot of changes. And so one of the things that I've learned that's huge, that I would tell everybody, is the pregame matters. The pregame matters. Like when we used to play football, you know, I would do well if I had a good pregame routine. And my pregame routine was playing music and getting pumped up and ready to go and going out and doing the right stretches and the right, you know, warm-ups, all this
Yeah.
stuff. And then you'd have a good game. If you just sat around and did nothing, then you didn't have a
Right.
good game. And so in life, it's the same way. You have to pregame. And I think that having a good morning routine is huge for me.
Okay.
Going through these certain tools that I have that I apply to myself is good every day. I think obviously prayer is huge.
Do you think there's people out there listening to us today that go, well, you know, that's a cool subject, but I don't know what changing my attitude will do.
Right.
I don't have a real reason to change it. I'm getting along well. I'm making this much money a month, and I got a nice home. I don't see the big deal
Sure.
about the attitude.
Well, I think that person, I would say to them, okay, what about the day you're going to die?
What are people going to say about you?
Yeah, what about the day you're going to die? I mean,
Yeah.
think about that. Did you make an impact in the world that you were in? Are you part of something bigger than yourself?
Well, Josh, I think that's goes along with being willing to sit and assess what your current attitude is like.
Yeah.
There you go.
Really. I mean,
Take a survey, look at it.
It's like communion, Pastor. You always say it's a time for letting God examine you,
Mm-hmm.
So
examine your heart.
Yes.
So if you sit there and really, maybe reflect on how's my attitude been today, I think we're all able, and most people will say I'm growing up enough to realize that I had bad attitude there, had a
Right.
better attitude there, and then look at basically saying, how do I get better? I always try to stretch myself. You guys know me. I'm always going to just try to go a little farther, do a little things, and that will put me in a place. I've been really focused on my fitness because I've got a couple of goals that I got to achieve. And the other day I was lifting heavier and hurt my shoulder. And I was like, okay. It wasn't like, oh, doggone it, I can't do that again. I'm like, okay, now I got to figure out how to keep improving without hurting my shoulders.
Right.
And the key was to change my grip on push-ups.
that and such a small thing.
But
Yeah.
it was like I didn't give up.
But how many people would say, well, I can't work out for 3 months?
Well,
you know?
see, but I think that's where it's like, oh, doggone, I don't want to do that again. But then make evaluating where I could go in my head and say, okay, I can't go that way. I'm going to go
Yeah.
another way. So I think self-evaluation in all your circumstances helps you.
Well, all of
And
it,
have a friend that can help you evaluate.
Yeah.
all
No,
of it
it's
is a
good.
perspective change, right? Vince and I were in a group setting a while back, and this lady, she's middle-aged, my age, and she told a story about how she had been given a diagnosis that she wasn't going to live very long. She had breast cancer.
Oh yeah.
And she prepared to die. She told her kids she was going to die. She was helping them understand what they needed to do in the house. They were like teenagers. She had dealt with it with herself. She accepted it. And then she goes to the doctor one day, and the doctor says, "You're not going to die." And so she was in this place of like, how do I live now? What do I do?
Yeah.
But her whole perspective changed, and she started to understand what was important and what wasn't. And I think that's, and Dad even went through the same thing. I mean, you start to understand what's important and what
Yes, you
isn't.
do.
And that to me is almost a really freeing place to be because you have perspective. You have the right perspective. Like, okay, this is important. That's not.
Well, what do you think of this saying? The greatest discovery of all time is that a person can change his future by merely changing his attitude.
Yeah. 100%.
Change your, where you're going to end up at today if you stay the way you
For better
are
or for worse.
is totally different
Right,
than where
right.
you'll end up at if you have a good attitude.
Yeah, if you have a good attitude.
You,
Absolutely.
you can change the end of your life dramatically by starting today to develop a better attitude.
My daughter had breast surgery when she was 17. And I was there, and her husband now was just her boyfriend, fiance back then. I remember that the nurse allowed 3 of us to go in the room, and I was sitting there, talking to my daughter, and so was my wife and my other daughter. And I saw her husband now come in the room, and she just changed. It was so funny how it changed my attitude towards him, realizing he is the man that is going to be more important in this circumstance than I am. And I walked out. I said, guys, this is easy for me. And I walked out. But it did, that moment, I saw a change in my attitude just by observing somebody else.
I think that's huge. I think also too, like not settling, like you just said, Tom, and being able to move with where people are at. Like, you ever met somebody and they kind of have a chip on their shoulder, but it's the right chip on their shoulder? Like, they have to get something done, and there's a reason for it,
Sure.
and you might not understand that reason.
It's like I'm on mission.
I'm on
Don't
mission.
Bother me.
Right.
I'm on mission. That's
or
okay.
it's protecting what's valuable to you, because there's times in our life that we're going to come into a place and you might think, well, that person's they're way off, but they're doing the thing they're supposed to do and they're protecting it.
Absolutely.
And sometimes that's hard to understand from an outside perspective, but that attitude will project them forward. I'm not saying that they need to be all out rude, and I'm not giving somebody the license to be wrong to people, but it's also having that understanding and then being able to
attitude's not a bad
right. But then
attitude at
also,
all.
like Tom said, being able to be moving in your attitude to say like, okay, I understand it now.
But we have to see a need for attitude, for a good attitude. And what's a bigger reason than Philippians 2:5? In your relationship with one another, have the same mindset and the same attitude as Jesus Christ. That's a command. So let's go secondly. How do we change our attitudes? We have to see a need to change them. Secondly, we need to have a plan. We need to have a plan. Someone says, start acting like the person that you want to become. Meditate on Scripture. Have a plan.
It's kind of like fake it till you make it in a way, right? Which is a business term. I mean, they say
we
it's a
have
good
to have a plan.
Yeah.
Do everything without grumbling or complaining. Let this be your prayer every day. Get up every morning and say, God, I want to change my attitude. And today I'm going to ask for the Holy Spirit's help. Every time I complain, I'm critical, check me, please. Have the Holy Spirit check me. I'll apologize. I'll confess my sin. Again, after you see a need to do it, you've got to have a plan. Decide to do a lot of apologizing. This is my life, but probably every week or 2 or 3, I have to at least apologize to one person every 1 to 3 weeks.
Yeah.
Because I made up my mind that I'm not going to change unless I hold myself accountable. And like, for example, the last few months, I've apologized to someone. I said, I robbed you of your joy today. Please forgive me. I said something rude. Please forgive me. Today, I wasn't the gossiper, but I sat there and let the gossip go, and I didn't intervene. Forgive me. This week, I had to say I was arrogant. Please forgive me. So we have to have a plan once we see a need.
Yeah.
How are we going to affect? How are we going to make this happen?
Pastor, can you actually even say, go ahead and take action with a better attitude without expecting certain results?
Yeah, there you go. That's important.
Expectation. I
That's
mean, it's
important.
almost like don't look at the way it's being received, but just have that better attitude.
Yeah.
You know, because sometimes we'll base it based on our expectations.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We want this to happen. If it doesn't happen, then it didn't work.
And expectations are different than goals, you know? They really are.
Right.
If you have an expectation that somebody else with their own brain, their own heart, their own mind, right? You expect them to act and react to you a certain way. That's foolish because you can't control them, right? But you can only control yourself. And I think
Well, then
that's
in your
huge.
plan too, understand that it starts with the mind. Again, I shared this when I talked about the tongue and the misuses of the tongue. It's like what you think about has a drip pan, and it drips down into your heart. And out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks, the thoughts come, everything. So you got to catch yourself at the cashier's line at the grocery store going, right now I'm thinking bad thoughts. I got to change those with something else. I love what Vince said. Get in on the conversation. You know, if they're counting pennies, go up and pay for their whole bill.
Yeah.
Well, and so the guy that cuts you off on the freeway and flips you off because it's your fault, right? That guy, he has 15 other things happening in his life. You don't know what is happening in his life. And so, to let people like that affect you, you know, you have to just have that perspective.
And like you said earlier, laughing at like just when things happen that are so out there, you just got to go real. Like, that can't even be real life right now.
Pregame,
you know,
dude, I'm telling you, like meditation is huge.
Yeah.
What do you do when someone flips you off and you've got a great attitude going and somebody flips you off?
Honestly, it depends on the day, but more than likely I'm going to laugh. I mean, more likely, like, I'm like,
Can you blow them a kiss?
What? And it's
Yeah, blow 'em a
terrible.
kiss. That's
I don't
funny.
think that's the best
funny.
attitude either, but usually I'm just so thrown off that somebody does that.
I had somebody
I got that from you.
the other day. The lanes were merging, and the merging lane was the one next to me. This guy sped up, but he was pulling a trailer. I'm going, there's no way. I had to back off, and then I would just like let it go. I was like, it was funny because it was doing it. I laughed. I was like, he really thinks he's gonna
Don't let
get
him
around
catch you laughing though, because this is because
they get more
like
angry.
somebody and then I'm like, what just happened? The person's honking their flip, and I look over, I'm like, what? They're like, like they're even more
angry.
mad. Yeah, they're
You know
like
what,
more
though?
angry.
I think I used
Like,
to, and I
what
did have a
happened?
bad habit. If somebody flipped me off, I'd blow them a kiss. And then one day I felt like God said, by blowing them a kiss is
the
the
same as
Christian way of
giving them
flipping them off
bird.
back. That's what it is,
Yeah.
basically.
Wow.
Yeah.
And
I've also
I wouldn't blow him a kiss these days.
I've also
but-
like I'm not the best driver in the world sometimes, and I've also cut somebody off and get mad, and I just go, "Hey, I'm sorry."
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
it changes their
And
attitude.
they're like,
changes
and
it.
they're like,
yeah.
They're
Okay.
cool.
Yeah, yeah,
They're
yeah.
cool. Have you
Yeah.
noticed that?
That's what I'm always like, my bad.
Yeah, I did
But
that
I do
the
smile,
other day.
so I'm like, huh?
And they look like they're really mad. And I went, I'm so sorry. And their whole
Yeah.
countenance changed.
Yeah.
for sure. And that's a humble. It's just it's a humility.
Here's what we're talking about. We're talking about attitudes today. We talked about values last week. Listen to this. It's really important. Reprogramming is an essential part of truly being born again.
Yeah.
There are Christians out there filling our church seats every Sunday, that have never taken the time to start reprogramming their lives. You got to reprogram your values from before you were saved. You got to reprogram your attitudes. For example, Romans 12:2 in the Message Bible.
Exactly.
It says, don't become so well adjusted to your culture that you fit into it without even thinking.
And the NASB says be transformed, changed,
Transformed.
right? Changed by the renewing of your mind.
Yeah.
Like actually changed.
Yeah.
You have to think different.
Like you're going to be a different person that day
Yeah.
if you choose to put
Yeah.
your head, your mind in
You know,
the right
I know
space.
we're getting close on time here, but let me, we're talking about how to change your attitude. Let me give you one more, and then you feel free to add one or two too. But, and I know this is redundant, but surround yourself with people who bring out the best in you.
Huge.
That's going to help you with your attitude.
It's huge.
Um, See, most of us have a tendency to surround ourselves with like-minded people, and that's not always good. In a perfect world, I think it'd be really good if we all had three best friends. You had one that we ministered to and saw as our ministry to lift them up and encourage them. We had a second one that lifts us up all the time and encourages us. And then we had a third one that was like-minded that we could just have fellowship with and let our hair down. Think if we had three of those.
Yeah.
We had one given to us, one we had to give to them, and one like-minded that we could just let our hair down and
Well,
fellowship.
so it's so sad because some of the best people on earth are so worn down because they give themselves to every person that has a need.
Yeah.
All needy
And
people.
it's too much.
You
And
can't do
so hopefully that, I know a husband and wife team who the husband looks out for the wife because the wife is constantly giving herself to other people, and it's good. It works because he's looking out for her. But if you don't have anybody looking out for you and you are somebody who loves to give, remember, you can't give somebody something you don't have. If your cup or your jar or your bottle is empty,
It's empty. You have nothing to give.
you've got nothing to give. You have to find a way to be filled. And I believe that comes from God, but it also comes through relationships. It comes through habits, so many different things. But also don't feel guilty about doing things you want to do, right? Like Vince, you don't feel guilty about doing what you want to do sometimes, and that's good.
No,
right?
I don't, because it's part of my, going to what he said. I need a vent period, and if I don't get that, whether it be on a mountain bike or a motorcycle or fixing a car, it'll rise up in me, and I'll implode
Yeah.
a little bit. And so I know for myself, I need some kind of outlet. And a lot of times I'll be on my motorcycle and be like, I can't believe this. Let it all out on the motorcycle.
Oh,
Vroom,
dude,
vroom,
yeah.
vroom. And then when I get back, I'm like, I'm good. I talked it all out in my brain. I'm good. It was all stuff that wasn't even meant anything.
What if we made it as a goal to say something encouraging, something very complimentary to every person we met during the week? I mean, if it's nothing more than, man, you look beautiful today. I love your hair today. Or you know what? Every time I see you, you just, you brighten my whole countenance up.
Yeah.
See, what we have to understand that is if we're going to take this podcast seriously, which I do, I'm not just giving you this stuff and not working on it, is that I have to realize that I'm on a journey. I'm going to make mistakes. It won't happen overnight. I won't go from a bad attitude to a good one overnight, but I can take baby steps.
Yeah.
And I can start working on some of these things we talked about today. Confessing my sin when I miss the boat. When I'm in a store line or I'm at church and I start thinking negative thoughts, try to replace them with positive ones. But the main one is pray for the Holy Spirit's help. Every day, say, Lord, I want to work. Some of you are working on your value system. I don't need to work on that. I have that down pretty good, but I need to work on the attitude. And so as a result of this podcast, I'm going to get back on the journey of working on my attitude more.
Yeah.
And so I don't know what you want to say. Anything you want to add on how do you change your attitude?
I want to just tell people, if you're listening out there, give yourself time. Because what do they say? An attitude or a habit takes 60 days. So don't just do it 2 weeks and go, oh, it didn't work.
No.
I just told you, Tom, before this podcast, I said, when I start working out, I get fatter first. My muscles push my fat out. And it's the same with your mind. It really is. Sometimes it doesn't seem to go the right way at first, but if you stick with it, it will go the right way.
I never thought that I'd really enjoy walking. And I started walking, and my wife mentioned something to me yesterday. I go, I'm really enjoying walking. She goes, it's been 2 months. I go, it's been 60 days. So I just realized that habit now has become a joy.
Yeah.
But the first 2 weeks, wow. And I would play games with myself as I was walking around, saying hi to the neighbors.
Yep.
Just, like you said, faking it till you make it,
Yeah.
And I've gotten the point now where it's like, you know,
Well, there's a real psychology to that. It's like the habits that you build,
Yes.
become part of you eventually.
so give yourself a chance.
Well, you know what?
That's good, Tom.
And I want to kind of bait our audience as we begin to conclude and end this one on attitude, unless you have something else you want to say. I really want to, maybe next week, you might want to tell people, or the week after, I want to address the subject of pornography on a podcast, just nothing but pornography. And I think some of our audience needs to hear it. Mostly men, not all men. In the last few months, I've had several emails from women going, we're hung up in pornography just like men.
Yeah.
And so I think next week we'll talk about it, but I think we might want to talk about pornography because AI, artificial intelligence today, is changing the whole game. And we've got to warn our listeners.
Well, there's a lot behind that idea, and it could be as simple as you are stuck in the grocery aisle and you're stuck with, you're looking at the tabloids, and that could be a form of pornography, or it's full blown. You've got an addiction, and so
Well, we'll
there's
save
a
it
lot
for
to it.
hopefully next week. I don't know, but anybody want to add anything about attitude? Any big deep thought you have before we go?
It's up to you.
I'm pretty much. I watch
No,
the clock
that's
here.
that's what I mean.
When I keep looking over my shoulder at the clock.
That's the thing I'm saying is it's up to you, like to have
Your
a good
attitude, your own.
Yeah, your attitude is up to
Oh, it's
you.
up to you. I see what you mean. It's up to me.
That was
what-
good. I
how
thought you were
want
saying
to
it was up to him. Like,
Yeah.
if
I
you
I
want,
know where it was going.
yeah, got it.
Right on. Well, hey, thank you guys for listening. We really do appreciate you guys. And reach out to us if you have any ideas or thoughts.
Yes.
And have a great Easter week. And we hope to see you at church on Sunday, wherever you are.
It's gonna be fun.
And we love you guys.
Love you guys.
In a hurricane, and it's bubbling over like sweet champagne. You got your mama's sunshine, you got your daddy's